Okay, so this is our third week in the field. This week we're supposed to talk about our students' literacy lesson that we observed and describe that and their performance, and then see if it's consistent with the results of the BRI assessments. So the way that their language arts subject works is that they have 3 different centers. So there's 3 different groups. There's the aide has one group, the special education teacher has another group, and the regular teacher has another group also. So the groups are separated by above average, average, and then below average, like learning wise. So my student is in the, I guess you could say, the average group, but she's still a little bit below reading because the below average are all classified students and this student isn't classified, so that's why she is in the middle group, but she still is below her reading level where she's supposed to be. In the first reading center, she was reading a text where she had to recognize printed words. The book was called In the Sky, and Mrs. Tupper read the book and then asked comprehension questions like, where was everything? Well, everything was in the sky. It was interesting because all the students in the group kind of needed coaching to answer that question. And then it's funny because Dr. Bean Folks came in and said she saw the book that they were reading and said that it was most likely at their frustration level, so that could be why they weren't really comprehending what was going on in the book. So then, after they read the book, Mrs. Tupper asked the students to find certain words in the book and highlight them, like color them in. The first word she asked them to look for was in. My student found it on the first page and drew a yellow line through it without too much of a problem. She found it on the second page right away, and she went ahead of everyone else and found it on the third page, and same thing for the last page. So I thought that was interesting that she was able, and a good thing that she was able to find it that quickly and easily. The next word Mrs. Tupper asked them to find was R. She wrote R on the whiteboard, and my student was able to read it and recognize it right away, and she found it on the first page of the book by scanning the words with her finger until she came across R. And then, like I said, Dr. Bean Folks came in to talk with Brooke and myself, and she mentioned how the book they were reading was most likely on their frustrational level, and that was because of the number of words on the page. We had showed our cooperating teacher one of the pre-primer passages that we wanted to do for a running record, and it was very simple. It was like the cat is black, the cat takes a nap, very simple things, and our cooperating teacher said that was even too high for our student to actually be able to read. So the book that they were reading in this center had multiple, probably about 10 words on each page, so it definitely was on their frustration level. The next center was with Mrs. Perna. She had, it was like a letter and sound recognition center. The students had to make words with that started with P, and they were just 3-letter words. They had to be consonant, vowel, consonant. My student had trouble putting the letters in the correct order. For example, the word was PAG, P-A-G, and she would spell it P-G-A. So she had trouble getting the vowel in between the 2 consonants. She knew all the sounds, but just couldn't get them in the right order, which kind of says a lot, and I thought was pretty interesting. At Mrs. Trainer's center, she was doing assessments, so it wasn't really any activity. She gave a test to all the students to see how they were doing. My student did okay on the assessment. She could have done a little bit better. I was just observing from the back. I didn't participate in that one. The first part of the assessment was to find the word and circle it. So Mrs. Trainer would say a word, and they had to circle the correct word. Let's see, there were 5 words, and she got 4 out of the 5 correct, so she did well on that. The next part was circle the picture that goes with the word. She got 2 out of 4 correct on that. And then the next section was say a word and figure out which word it is. So kind of like similar to the first section. She actually got all of those correct. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So she got 5 out of 5, which was great. The next section and second to last section was to find a picture that went with the sentence that Mrs. Trainer said. So it was Pam sat with Nan. So she would have to find the picture that goes with that. There were 3 of those. She got 2 out of the 3 correct. Then the last section was interesting. Mrs. Trainer read a short story while they colored the picture that went with the story. And then after Mrs. Trainer was done reading the story, she asked them questions. For example, it said circle the picture that says what the story is about, which was cats. She got that correct. Circle the color that cats can be tan. She circled pan at first, but then she corrected herself and circled tan, which was nice to see. In the end, she ended up getting 3 out of 6 correct, so 50%. She could do better on that. So the first 2 literacy centers, my student seemed to do very well, and then her assessment seemed to better correlate with the ELA results that we got, or that I got. I think that's because, after observing her literacy centers and comparing those results to the results from the ELAs, which I'll go over in a minute, but they were fairly low. There wasn't much correlation except for Mrs. Trainer's assessment, where she didn't perform very well and had trouble identifying correct words and pictures. A reason I don't think the other 2 centers correlated with the ELA results was because the instruction in those 2 centers was differentiated to her learning level. So like I said, they have 3 separate groups that that the students are separated into based on their current learning level. So she was able to succeed in the first 2 centers without much difficulty. So basically, I have completed 4 out of my 5 ELA assessments. I chose alphabet knowledge, wordless picture reading, auditory discrimination, and basic word knowledge. And I wanted to do a pre-primer passage, but I showed my cooperating teacher the lowest one that the BRI book has, or like the ELA has, and she said it might even be too high for my students, so I might have to find a book from her class and make my own running record. Let's see. The alphabet knowledge, I want to retest her, or alphabet knowledge we did last week, which I talked about in my previous reflection video from last week. The basic word knowledge, I want to retest her in because she really didn't do well. I think she knew 3 out of the 15 words, so that is not very good at all. I want to retest her because I'm hoping that maybe she was just kind of nervous. It seemed like she was almost afraid to say an answer because she didn't want to say the wrong answer, so I'm hoping maybe next week she'll be a little bit more comfortable with me and opening up, and hopefully she'll do a little bit better, because 3 out of 15 words, and they're just normal sight words, is not very good, so we would have to do a lot of work on that. Other than that, it was a pretty good day in the field, and I look forward to next